Hello, my name is Chris Callan and I am CEO of Grit Virtual. This is a release video to cover some of the new features included in our version 1.3. One of the biggest examples of the new type of workflow that we introduced with version 1.3 is the fact that we're going to look at planning not at only the most granular level, but look at it in every level of granularity for the different planning and scheduling operations that exist on our job sites. Now, this starts with the master planning level and covers most of the construction sequence of the job site, looking 6 months to 2 years into the future, just to understand the feasibility of certain milestone deliverables. Then once we get into the six-week look-aheads, we really start to look at the handoffs between the individual trades. So when it comes to grit, this is actually something what we're looking at from transferring from activity-based with finish to start to start, lead and lag, associated between two or more trades, where we're actually moving between down to a task level, where we have very short, concise, measurable tasks that are able to be broken down to purely a finish to start dependency that we'll show once we get to that point in the software. Then we have the look-ahead planning. This is to remove most of the constraints. Obviously, we have our long lead items that are popular on every project that will be outside of this 3-week window, but largely 3 weeks is enough to make ready the tools, the equipment, the materials, and information and manpower required to perform an activity. And then, as has been very common or very prominent in the lean construction methodology, is the concept of weekly work planning. And we're actually taking this a little bit further and moving it towards a sprint type format. Now, this existed in our previous versions, but it's much more prominent now. And then the learning and improving aspect of the schedule and referring back to the actual completion versus planned is something that we look to calculate upon, but not only at the granular level, but how can we tie it back all the way to the master schedule that we started with. So this first starts out with, we have to make sure that we take account of a master level schedule, and this is going to be in the form of a Gantt chart. This is based upon hundreds of client interviews and a lot of feedback that have said in the pre-construction phase or even at the bid phase, we're going to have a schedule that exists before you get to the phased planning level that Grit was originally targeting. So we're going to have this as a jumping off point. So not necessarily dismissing the use of Gantt, but starting with Gantt and breaking it down from there. So you can create a Gantt chart directly inside of Grit using simple CPM functionality, creating a hierarchy of tasks, activities, and their groupings. And basically, this is the page where you're going to have your schedule and then attach it to the model in order to create a typical 4D Gantt-powered simulation. Now, to show a more true example, we're going to jump to a Gantt chart that was imported via our CSV importer. So if you build a schedule within Microsoft Project or Primavera P6, you'll be able to bring that into Grit and then immediately begin using it inside of the Master Schedule tab. So here, something additional we're going to look to do is obviously attach it to the model objects that the activity represents, but also assign it to the subcontractor responsible for that work. Now, this is nothing new. A lot of scheduling software have looked at the resource requirements, but in order for us to resource level and look at mobilization, the throughput of activities and tasks that a given subcontractor can complete at a given time, this is a little bit more important for us than maybe some of the other softwares you might be familiar with. So as I mentioned earlier, the master schedule is great for a high-level overview of the project, and this is prepared by master schedulers or project managers. Now, as we move to the phase planner tab, we're actually looking to introduce the foremen and superintendents who are actually going to be executing the work in order to get more detailed information about the tasks. Now, I've filtered by the foundation activity that came through on the master schedule, and I'm going to look to break it up in two different ways. First, I'm going to select a subset of the objects that represent the activity in order to create 3 separate pores that all correspond to the foundation activity. And then second, I'm going to introduce 3 different tasks per pore in order to more accurately describe the different steps and operations I'm going to perform on a job site. For example, for the foundations, I'm going to excavate first, then reinforce, and then pour. And this is at the discretion of that foreman or superintendent how granular they want to get to. But this allows us to report back a yes, no, I completed the work expected today, rather than reporting back a guess at a percentage complete of an 8-day activity. So essentially what we've done is break one activity that came from the Gantt chart prepared by a project manager into 9 individual tasks that now have the subject matter expertise of the foreman or superintendent. Now, something important to take note of is due to the fact that this comes from the foreman or superintendent and is largely going to be a more granular set of tasks compared to the master schedule, we understand and expect this to be more reliable, and therefore, as soon as an activity has been completely parted out or tasked out, then we look to the tasks in our schedule generation in lieu of the activity that was it originally broken down from. The next feature I'll cover is the enhanced submittal integration with our schedule. Now, this is the start of our offsite or supply chain type activity, prioritization, and tracking. We understand that even with a reliable schedule for the on-site activity, supply chain activities are often the ones that end up pushing schedule or requiring an adjustment. That's why we look to the start date of an activity and the prep days required for that material to be shaken out or organized once received. Then we look at the fabrication and delivery days required to understand what's the required approval date for that information. Then we look at the amount of days allowed for review, and we derive back our submit by date that is actually the first step of the process. But this allows us to derive a submit by date based on all of these different lead times that is connected to the active construction schedule. Now, in our last release, we attached the submittals directly to the first activity, but didn't allow for these other lead times that exist for the submittal and the material that they represent. But with this release, we're looking to actually integrate directly with those date fields that exist inside of Procore. So if you choose to, you can actually overwrite the date fields that exist inside the Procore submittal based upon your active schedule that lives within Grit. If you choose to only write over if the new date is before the existing Procore date, that's exactly what will happen, and you can choose the individual fields that you are willing to allow Grit to override. This allows the entire procurement process of submittals and the materials that they represent to be managed within Procore with the intelligence of an active schedule. Now, the next feature I'll demonstrate comes from some feedback that the sprints tying back to the master schedule wasn't exactly a clear or transparent process. So we've added a schedule view that actually brings in from the look ahead tab a 1-week look ahead. So just by being able to select multiple tasks as they exist as bars on the chart, they can actually commit to these, and this is the same function as dragging them across the line into committed. Now we're getting into a pretty long video, so I'll wrap it up quickly with the updates to our dashboard. So at the top left, you'll see that we've added a widget that shows you the projected completion date based upon the living schedule. So if you remember from our past videos, we analyzed the delta between the planned completion time of a task versus the actual completion and automatically optimize the contingency plan. This will be showing the projected completion date of the project as well as any milestones that you have in the project and the delta between the active schedule and the living schedule. You obviously still have your sprint information, your PPC with reasons analysis for activities that were not complete that were committed to, and then we've added a project feed. Grit is intended to be a completely collaborative product with logins for foremen, superintendents, master schedulers, and project managers. This feed will show all updates that are happening within the system, whether a task or activity is updated with plan information or tasks are moved to a different status such as in progress or complete. We have a lot of plans to expand upon this, but for today you'll see a feed of all of the active interactions that are happening within your project team. We want to thank you for your time reviewing this video. We obviously can't cover every different feature that we've added or the product as a whole, so we invite you to come visit with us at the events that are listed here. BIM Forum and Built World's projects this week in Las Vegas and Los Angeles. Next month we'll be at LCI Congress in Orlando, and then in November we're going out to the Bay Area for Built World's Ventures West, and then back to Vegas for Autodesk University. If you have any questions before then, aren't able to make it, please reach out to us at hello@gritvirtual.com. Thank you for your time.